Hello, knitters. Yeah. Hello. I've been sitting here quiet for so long. My throat kind of seized up. Hello, knitters. Barbara Benson here. I'm an independent knitwear designer who likes to make videos here on YouTube. And we also do these live streams once a month in the last week, last Thursday of the month. And here we are. August is almost over. I'm excited to be here yet again, and it always seems to come way more quickly than I figure it will. I'm fussing around with everything. I just can't keep messing around. We already have a few people in here, so I'm so happy that you have joined us. We've got someone in steamy Virginia. You know what? It is steamy here too, Stitchich. It has the last couple days we've had some incredibly serious torrential rain kind of situation, which makes total sense because we live in the subtropics. But it's been a lot of rain, and it's been a lot of thunder. There was one that we had that I was like, that was my backyard, because it shook our entire house. My hair's not cooperating the best today. We also have the other barber here already, and now my golfer's here. Hello. Hello. I'm so excited, and it's super fun to see everybody. It's, the sultry time of year. August has always been one of those. It's when I lived in the northern area, August really felt very much like more the end of summer, beginning of the fall. Whereas here in the South, when I lived in Atlanta and here further south, you definitely September still has some pretty bad weather. Still warm. And, here in Florida, it's about the season isn't whether or not it's summer or fall. The season is whether or not it's hurricane season or not. So it is hurricane season still through September. So that is something that we just have to watch. It's just one of those things. Hello, Karen. Welcome. Hello, Sally in Louisiana. And I just love that you have the most Louisiana last name that ever Louisiana. Yeah, I guess you could also be a Boudreaux. I know you're the reason why we ended up talking about poking a nutria with a stick, I believe. It felt like fall last week where you are, Barbara. Yeah, it's we had almost a breeze today when I got out of the car. And it was because it was overcast. So when the sun's not actively beating down on you, it's a little bit, but it's still in the upper 80s, lower 90s. So that is a whole lot of not fun. So we are here. This is hello. That is a funny username. Hi in Michigan. I'm sure it's actually starting to cool off in Michigan. I guess it depends on what part of Michigan you're in. And that's, Michigan's one of those unique, it is a unique state because it's like, what part? I mean, what part? Because you've got the whole part, but then you've also got the Upper Peninsula. So I still don't understand the whole Ooper thing. Why is there a part of Michigan up someplace else? It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm sure there's some bizarre thing that happened in the 1700s that ended up with that. It's still really hot in South Louisiana. I completely believe that. No, it's still hot in Michigan too. Ugh. It's no good, man. It's no good. We need sweater weather, right? We need the weather where we can start really getting into the warm stuff. I mean, I knit the same stuff year round, but I know there are people who are seasonal knitters. That's a question from me to you guys. Y'all, are you guys seasonal knitters? Do you knit specific things in specific seasons, or is it just whatever strikes your fancy? Because frankly, if I knit sweaters, I would think I would actually be knitting the sweaters in the spring and the summer so that they would be done in time for me to wear them in the fall and the winter. It seems like starting a sweater in the fall or the winter just guarantees that I'll get it done just in time to like put it away because it's going to be too hot. But that's because I knit a sweater, it would probably take me like 6 months to make a sweater. So curious, if anybody feels like answering in the chat about that, if you feel like you're a seasonal knitter, that would be something really interesting. I knit the same thing year round, so I'm not a seasonal knitter. Okay. You got the Oopers in exchange for Toledo in the Toledo War with Ohio. Dude, that is fascinating. Thank you for that information. It's one of those, like, I'm sure that everybody from Michigan and probably Ohio knows that, but that's not something that our textbooks ever really covered because, you got them in exchange for Toledo in Toledo War with Ohio. But how did Ohio ever? Oh, you know what? I'm sure it made sense at the time. That is really fascinating. Karen would love to start a good tangent right off the bat, but you have an actual yarn question. I am excited about an actual yarn question, Karen. So please let me know what the yarn question is. Okay, so has started the cardigan already. Hello, Arnetta. You knit year round because you do charity knitting. So you're like me, you just knit the same stuff all the time. Hello, Knit Crochet Tiger. I appreciate you coming here. Okay. So recommendations for alternating hand-dyed skeins when you are knitting flat. You know what? I actually have a video on that. But it's not really about that. Okay. So this has a lot of other stuff in it. So the name of that video is how to fade your yarns in your knitting. Okay, so there's a whole lot in there, Karen, about the color, but also it shows you the technique because fading, the whole concept of fading your colors into each other is simply alternating skeins. And when you alternate skeins, like hand-dyed yarns, you're just knitting stripes. That's all you're doing is knitting stripes. And it's about you knit it exactly like you would knit stripes in the round. You're going to carry one of the yarns up the side. And typically you're going to do, instead of having 2 rows of color A and 2 rows of color B, what you're going to do is take 2 balls of the same color yarn, that is the hand-dyed yarn, designate one color A, designate ball A and ball B of the same color. And what you'll do is 2 rows of color A, 2 rows of ball B, 2 rows of ball A, 2 rows of ball B, and you just alternate them like literally it's exactly like striping. Now, if your hand-dyed yarn isn't drastically different, like if you undo the skeins and lay them out, like don't cut the thingies, but just untwist them and lay them out flat in hanks and lay them side by side and look at them carefully and see how different the color is. And if they aren't substantially different, like if they're seriously different, then you're going to have to stripe the whole thing. If they're not substantially different, you can get away with blending or fading just at the transition between balls. And that is where that fading video will come in. So essentially what that would do is you would just knit it until you got to the point where, and again, you're just talking about knitting flat. You're just going to knit it till you get to the point where you feel like you have like maybe 12 rows left, which would be 6 stripes. And then what you do is you just knit ball A until you feel like you have about enough yarn for 12 rows. And then you bring in ball B and do 2 rows of ball B and then 2 rows of ball A and then 2 rows of ball B and 2 rows of ball A until you run out of ball A. And then you just keep on going with ball B. Now, the easiest way to do this, especially when knitting flat, is for you to start and stop at the end of a row. Well, start the ball at the beginning of a row and end your ball that you're taking off at the end of a wrong side row, because you're going to then want to bring your yarn up again. So bring in the new ball at the beginning of a right side row and leave off of the old ball at the end of a wrong side row, if that made sense. So let me know, Karen, if that helps at all, or if there's something I missed or that didn't make sense to you. Okay, let's see here. Okay, Sally knits mostly socks, sometimes a shawl or scarf year round. No sweaters, not cold enough here for me. Yeah, I don't knit garments at all. I have knit tees, and actually, that is a really good thing for hot. So this is might be fun for any of you. There are really great things that you can knit if you live in a warm weather climate. Um, the tees. You can knit like t-shirts is what they call them, but like short sleeved with linen or silk or cotton. You can knit like what I'm wearing, something like this can be knit. And those are super fun to knit for people who like to knit that sort of thing, and is a good thing. And especially ones that have lace in them and everything. So that's cool. Topic, knit crochet tiger. So what's the topic today? The topic is whatever we want to talk about is the topic. And officially it's Ask Me Anything about knitting and yarn, the fiber industry, all that kind of stuff. The topic goes wherever we want. I don't have like an official kind of situation. That's not the way we do this. So alternating yarns, why would it be different when knitting in the round versus flat knitting? So the only thing that I can think of that would be significantly different, alternating yarns, is if you are knitting in the round, you can do one row stripes. Because if you're knitting flat, you have to do 2 row stripes. You have to knit a right side and a wrong side before you switch colors, because you have to get back to where your other ball of yarn is. Whereas if you are knitting in the round, you could do 1 round of ball A and then 1 round of ball B and then 1 round of ball A and then you can knit single round stripes, because you come back to where the other ball is at the end of every round. You do not have to do a there and back again. So that is really the only significant difference that I can think of in alternating skeins between knitting in the round and knitting flat. But I can also understand that if you are knitting flat, and all of the instructional videos and suggestions you can find are demonstrations of it being done in the round, especially if you are a visual learner, that it might be hard to translate in your brain from one to the other. But if you're a visual learner, hearing me verbally describe it might not be particularly helpful either. But there really isn't a huge amount of difference. Well, there's there again with alternating skeins, especially if we're trying to blend for a variegated or a multicolor yarn, if you're knitting flat, assuming you're knitting like a shawl or a scarf or something like that, there are considerations that if you're knitting like a garment in the round, there are considerations that you would have to take in, because especially like a sweater, if you're changing, like if your yarns are fairly different colors, you need to make, and like some are darker and some are lighter, and you're trying to blend them in, you got to be really careful, because you might end up with like your arms a different color than the body. So you have to like make that judgment. And like, if you have to hold on to like, I'm only going to use half of this skein for the body, because I also want the bottom of my, like if I'm doing a long sleeve sweater, I want to save that extra ball so that the darker yarn's on the bottom of my garment, but also on the bottom of my sleeves. You might have to play with that a bit. Whereas if you're knitting flat, again, you got to think about it differently and how the different colors are going to interact in the flat pieces. So I don't know about the solid, tonal, or variegated, but they can be. Hand-dyed yarns can be solid, they can be tonal, they can be variegated, and it just depends on. And honestly, you could have hand-dyed it yourself. But typically, a hand-dyed yarn has a higher chance of being not as matchy-matchy that there's not really not really a dye lot. So whereas if you have a commercially produced yarn that is dyed in bulk and they have a color correction kind of situation where you can even go almost across dye lots, hand dyed yarns, you can have variations in color, even in their solids, um, from batch to batch. And it just depends. It depends on the dyer and their experience level and how it works for them. You love good info dump about construction or techniques because they translate into your Tunisian crochet. Tunisian crochet is really cool, and I have no idea how to do it, but I can totally see how it would translate because it really does, in many ways, mimic the fabric that you're creating with knitting. So, is just as long as you know what you're trying to do, you can achieve it yourself. Anissa Daly, 99. Hello. Hi, Knit Eco Chic. I'm so glad that you joined us. She Knit Eco Chic is a designer, and she is here, and she specializes in non-animal yarns because she is allergic to animal-based yarns. So, if you have any questions that I can't answer, I'm excited she's here because she probably can. She knows way more about cotton and linen and things like that than I do. She actually designs garments too, so that's one place where I don't do well. Um, okay, if you're striping or color blocking a garment, what's the best way to carry the color changes so the sleeves match the body? See, this is getting into garments, and I neither design or knit garments. So it's one of those things that when I'm teaching classes about it, I'm like, you need to be aware of this, and this is something you need to think about, but I really don't have any advice on how to do it because it's not something I do. But yeah, if I had drastically different color lots, I would probably try to blend them a lot better and with an eye towards looking at how the piece is constructed. It's another thing you have to think about, especially with variegated yarns. If you have a heavily variegated yarn, one construction thing you should think about is if you have a garment that is worked partially in the round, but it's like one of those where it's worked partially in the round and then split, and like the top and the back are worked flat and then put back together, know that when you change how that from like going, you might not have any problems with pooling when you're knitting in the round, but when you switch to just, instead of going all the way around, you switch to just the top part, you might end up with pooling and flashing when you switch to knitting flat because you've changed the number of stitches that you're knitting at any given time. So that's something to really think about when you're doing variegated yarns, which is where alternating skeins can really come in and be clutch for that. There's so much to talk about knitting with variegated yarns. I teach a whole class on that. Hello, Graceful Oak Fibers. Welcome. Ooh, I'm gonna open you a new tab. That didn't help. I clicked on the wrong thing. Nope, it's not cooperating with me. Okay. My golfer, a colleague of yours who wants to knit her first sweater using ice yarns Angora Classic was asking my advice. She is not getting gauge, far from it. Um, so has she blocked it? The number one question is, okay, the three things of blocking of doing a gauge. Is she using the needles that she plans on knitting the project with? Is she making the swatch in the same fashion? So if the project is knit in the round, is she swatching in the round? If the project is knit flat, she needs to be swatching flat. And has she blocked her swatch before she is measuring the gauge? Those are the first three things, because when she says she's not getting gauge, there's a whole world. And how is she checking her gauge? If it says 20 stitches in 4 inches, if she's saying, and these are just numbers, it says 20 stitches and 20 rows in 4 inches, right? Square, whatever. Is she casting on 20 stitches and knitting 20 rows, binding it off, and then measuring that? Because that's not how you check gauge. You need to, we've gone over this many times, so you need to find out how she is checking her gauge, especially since it's her first sweater, because it's got to be blocked. Well, and the thing is Angora and acrylic is a very strange combination. It's going to block somewhat, but not completely, because the acrylic is not really going to block, but the Angora should block. So again, I've never seen that blend, so I don't know how it's going to behave. But yeah, definitely. Because if the sweater's knit in the round, is she swatching in the round? That is one of the number one things that I would say that her gauge might be drastically off. And then, is she measuring a blocked swatch? And is she using, all those things that I just said? You know what? It might. Okay. And now she's saying, I was trying to tell her it was not the best yarn for her first sweater, but she still wants to use it. What should I do? Insist it's not a good idea. You can't save your friends. I mean, you can tell them, this is what I know, but if someone's determined to set themselves on fire, I just don't hand them a match, but they're going to find a lighter someplace. It's just what they're going to do. So I don't know if the yarn's good or not, but it is going to be a little bit more challenging because it's a very interesting thing. But finding out if she's measuring a blocked gauge is really the number one. And it depends on the sweater itself. And is that yarn a good match for the sweater? Who knows? Who knows? Okay. Arnetta, you are sneaky, Arnetta. I'll show to you in just a second. She asked me what's the garment on the mannequin behind me. I'm assuming you're meaning the knitted piece. It's a shawl. Tunisian crochet is cool. Best to have a really long crochet hook or a hook with a cord, because yes, I know, I've seen it, and it's very, very cool. Okay, a cardigan. Okay, you say you have a cardigan planned with hand-dyed variegated and leaning into the pooling and flashing as designer choice. And yes, if you like pooling and flashing, that's great. But since it's a cardigan, I'm going to assume the majority of it is going to be knit flat, but how it pulls is going to drastically change when you switch to knitting, I assume, the sleeves, unless you're doing one of those big T shape and doing a seam. I mean, and that is one way you could do it. Literally, you could make the whole cardigan, like start at the bottom, knit, then make a T, and then knit, and then seam up the arms. But if you're doing the body flat and then the arms in the round, the way it's going to pool in the body and the way it's going to pool in the arms is going to be quite different. Have a bucket of tissues to go with a force slick design that works with positive shaping. Yeah. Ooh, doo, doo. Okay, so you're doing the whole thing flat. It will, but again, if you're doing it the way I described it, where it's like up the back, so you're doing this distance, and then you pull in the arms, and it's like it's got the arms stretched out like this. When that distance, whenever the number changes stitch, whenever the number of stitches change, how it's going to pool is going to change. So that's one of those things. Okay, the thing behind me, Arnetta. You guys have seen this. This has been something that has caused me much consternation, but it is the shawl. It is done. It has not been blocked because, as you can see, it still has the dangly bits going on, but this is the big old shawl that I have been working on for many months. I spent many months figuring out the math, and then it took many months to knit it because my shoulder is bothering me. But so it's 6 mini skeins of the Yowza. So it's 6 colors that are about 200 yards a piece, DK weight. It's going to change. It's going to look very different because I'm going to block it, and you can see there's lace in here. So when the lace gets blocked, it's going to make it look substantially different. But it goes through 6 colors, and figuring out the colors was a fairly substantial. And then comes, there we go. And the thing is, this is one of the things that took me so much time, is that I don't know if you can see it. This end, that's okay. This is the beginning, and this is the end. So the way it works is it starts with colors A and B, and then switches to A and C, and then switches to C and D, and then switches to D and E, and then switches to E and F, and then switches to E and F, and then switches back to A and B. So this is B, and this is A, and then this darker pink is F. So it goes through. It's big. It is enormous. It's definitely, I'm going to put in the instructions that we want to block for width, because as you can see, the width is not, I mean, it's fairly wide, but I want to block for width because it definitely is fine on length. So this is how wide it is. You know what? This is not an accurate thing. So right now, the width is 12.5 inches, and that's unblocked. I'm hoping to get it up to like 18, but we'll see. Because the thing is you think sometimes you feel like you need it wider, but here, let me show you. If I just put it across my shoulders, like, traditional stole wearing, you can see, I mean, it comes down to like my armpits, but it's long, so it can be wrapped. I mean, this one could actually probably be for normal size. For less plus size people, you could probably tie it around. I don't know. We'll see how wide it gets. I was shooting them, and I did all my math. I was shooting for 20 inches, but I don't know if it's going to block that much. You do all the math, and you do all the gauge, and then you do the math, and then you do the gauge, and then you do the math, and then you do the gauge, and then you just kind of cross your fingers to see what's going to happen. And it's a shawl, it's a stole. It doesn't have to fit anything. Okay, let's see here. Oh, I'm so glad you all like it. I love Knit and Crochet Tiger. She says that it's she likes the bias. I love knitting on the bias. I love the way it makes things drape. It makes things fall better, and I love the angle. I don't like straight. If you've looked at many of my designs, I don't have a whole lot of straight stuff. It tends to be curvy, but I also like things on the diagonal, and I like how here. Again, this hasn't been blocked yet. I like that how it hangs. You've got that point, and it makes it feel even longer than it is because the points hang down. So I think it's cool. Oh, I'm so glad you like the colors, my golfer. It actually, I wonder if I could find it. I actually, oh, now I got to log in. Let's log in. Let's see if this is the right login. I have like automatic login, but then I don't know. And I think that was the wrong login, I think. Yeah, that was the wrong login. I need to log out of that. I need to log in. There we go. See, I have business accounts and I have my personal accounts for several different things. And I do not need that. Go away. Um ugh, but the business aspects are sometimes super, super annoying. Let's see here. I'm trying to find something on Pinterest. So you might not see me for a year or two. Uh, here we go. So this, if you're on Pinterest, I try to stay off of Pinterest, but I do put stuff on it occasionally. What happens is I'll go on it and then I'll lose like half my life to it. But this is specifically color inspiration images that I have saved that I go back when I need the inspiration, when I'm trying to select colors for projects that I'm working on. Whenever I I end up coming back and being like, I can't even think of anything, you know? Um, and I'm trying to find because there was a specific photo that, and what it is I worked with Miss Babs, with the people at Miss Babs, and I sent them this photo. And I was like, so here's the picture that I am trying to use as inspiration. And can you suggest, can we work together and find, colors that work with this particular inspiration photo? And they're amazing because they know all their colors and they can go through and make suggestions to me. And I cannot find the specific, I cannot, it's not cooperating me. No, I can't find it. It's you know what? This is why I am the least organized person on the face of the earth. Nope. Actually, is that it? Yes, this is it. Here we go. How do I share this? Share. Copy link. Here we go. So there is the image that that is the image that we pulled the colors from for this. That's what the image, that's where those color combinations came from. Hello, Colette from Minnesota. That is very fun. Okay. No, I was not trying to make it the same length as the Doctor Who scarf. I do like, well, actually my son, when I finished it, he's like, it's really long. I prefer, especially when we're dealing with scarves or straight stoles like this, I prefer having them extra long because I want to be able to wear them like this. I want to be able to make myself, and again, this is unblocked, so it's all goobered up right now. I want to be able to make myself like a cowl. And then, you know what? Here. It'll be easier to do it on her. So what I would do, I want to be able to have, see, and I did it, I'm doing it quickly, so it's getting, but that gives you a vague idea. I want to be able to have enough, see, and I need to even these up, to have a cowl and the tails. So I make them extra long so that it can be wrapped that way. if that makes sense. So that's why if you, most of my scarf patterns, you're looking at them, they're going to be 7 to 8 feet long. They're going to be really long so that they can double wrap. And also, it's because I'm a bigger person. And I learned the hard way that as a bigger person, for the longest time, I was like, oh, I need to make little small things so that I don't look even bigger. But I learned that wearing little small things were not proportional and that I look better in larger accessories because it balances my physical size better. So that's that. Yes, Pinterest is the hole that Alice is hesitant. It is Pinterest. You know, I was an early adopter of Pinterest. I was on it very, very, very early, and it took over my life for a while. Long cowls, yes. For me, cowls can be two lengths, either like 24 inches, which is it's around the neck, or to my belly button, so that I can double wrap. Nothing in between, really. Um, Yes, thank you. Eco Chic is saying, remember to hit the like button. I appreciate it if you do. We actually, our numbers are kind of low. We don't have as many people in here as we normally do. And I'm very thankful for all of you who are here. I think it's a high probability that it's because it is a holiday weekend, that there are people who are maybe not around. But also, I think it has to do with the fact that I do not turn on, because of the problems y'all were having with the mid-roll ads. I don't turn on the advertising. When I do live screens, I do not monetize them. I do not turn on the advertising. And I think because I do not turn on the advertising, YouTube does not prioritize sending out the notifications to people and suggesting it. I don't think that I I, I think it's it's a double-edged sword. I don't want y'all to have to watch those ads because you said they were annoying, but I think it's why the numbers of people who get the notifications and or who are finding it are down by we're down by like 50 to 75% from other times, and it could be a whole variety of things. But you know what? It doesn't really matter. I'm excited that any of y'all have come to sit here and chat with me and have some fun. And you got to see my new piece before anybody else did. This is going to have to be blocked. Not tomorrow. I should block it tomorrow. Maybe I can get it blocked tomorrow morning. I have to go to St. Petersburg tomorrow. So that is a little trip that I have to make for fun. Well, I'm glad you're moved and settled in, Knit Eco Chic. Hello, Darlene. Thank you so much. It needs to be blocked, but it is the next thing that is coming. And now that it's done, I'm gonna work on some other stuff. And you can expect to see several small things, because after I finish a really big knit, and this one's over 1,200 yards, after I finish a really big knit, I tend to want to do nothing but potato chip knitting, nothing but something that is only going to take me like a week to knit, something that's going to knit very quickly. Maybe I'll have the time to work on another second sock cowl. I was thinking about even maybe doing a collection and calling them short attention span knitting, because I just want to like bust out. It's like some cows and some hats and some fingerless mitts and just stuff that's fast. That's all I want to do. Where's the thing I bought? Where did I put it? I impulse bought some yarn. I was in a local yarn store, and I really try to not walk out empty-handed because I just want to support local yarn stores, not that I need yarn. And this is the thing that spoke to me. So I bought this. It's very bright. Look. Oh, look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? Kind of matches my hair. This is a new Malabrigo yarn called Noventa that I have never used. And it is a super bulky. It is 90 yards in 125 grams. Okay, I need to do some math on that. So if 90 yards equals 125 grams, then how many yards? So it'd be 90 times 100 divided by 125. So that'd be 72 yards in 100 grams. That's the way I think. This is saying to use US size 13 to 17 or 9 to 12 millimeter. It's 100% superwash merino. So that is the new, and this color is seahorse. So I don't know what I want to do with it. What can I do with one? See, this is the problem. I only bought one skein. I should have probably bought two skeins. But then if I bought two skeins, I probably would have needed three skeins. So I only bought one skein, and it wasn't cheap. This is a $25 skein, and that's the bulky element of it. So I'm trying to decide if I think I could maybe get a pair of like short fingerless mitts out of it. Might be nice, or I could definitely get a hat out of it, or I could do a cowl. I don't think it's enough to do a scarf, or it's definitely not enough to do a scarflet, and it's really not enough for a shawl. That's just not enough yardage for a shawl. It'd be like a kerchief. I don't know, but it's pretty and it's soft, and I'm excited about it. You like the quick win? Yes, quick win is a good. I'm just short attention span. I do not have the attention span right now. So that is. Darlene is asking me, how long did it take you to knit it? So here's the problem with that question, Darlene, because what happened is I cast on and I knit it to here, and I realized I had the wrong needle size. Even though I had swatched, I had to go down. So I had to frog it entirely. And then I cast on and I knit it to about here. And I realized that I had cast on too many stitches and it was coming out wider than I wanted. In retrospect, maybe it had been a bad choice. We'll see. So then I swatched back to here. And then I got to here. All right. I had gotten into here. And I came to a realization that the way the yarn was being used, I wasn't using enough of the yarn because I had only done, so this is 6 repeats of this stitch. Originally, I had only done 4 repeats of this stitch. So I had to do a ridiculous amount of math and weigh stuff. And you can see we've got all kinds of stuff going on here. So then I got to here and I realized that I needed to add 2 more. Well, I hadn't done enough repeats of this and I hadn't done enough repeats of this. So then I realized I had to add in more repeats. So then I had to frog back to here, and you can see where I had frogged back to because there is the extra. Here's where it joined in. I had to put in new yarn. And so it wasn't until I'd gotten through all of that and gotten all that math done and figured out exactly how many repeats of each stitch I needed to do that I was actually to the point where I could, where there was clear sailing, where I could actually actively start knitting the piece. So the process of knitting and frogging and knitting and frogging and knitting and frogging and knitting and frogging and knitting and frogging took about 2.5 months. Once I actually figured all that out and was able to dedicate time to just, I wasn't having to do any more math. I wasn't having to rewrite anything. I wasn't having to do anything. So that took 2.5 months. The actual knitting to get all 1,200 yards knit, that probably took me 3 months. And again, on and off and other things in my life. And I mean, just sitting down and doing it. I have no idea how many hours it would have taken, but it's taken. I think I finally got it figured out and like the pattern settled at the beginning of the summer. We could probably go back and look at old lives because I think I remember me saying, I finally figured it out. But it was probably about 3 months ago that I got that. And then it's just been knitting since then and getting the knitting. But we've had family trips and we've done things and it's the summer. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question very well. Hi, Studio Roots. I'm excited you're here. Yes, that's one of the things I was thinking about. Short attention span. Is it take a short attention span? And I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It feels like I might be able to get something scarfy out of it. Scarflity. Because it's 90 yards on like a size maybe 14 or 15. Well, I don't think 14s exist. Maybe a 15. I don't know. I got to think about it. If I do lace, it might expand out a little bit. I wouldn't. Colette, you are an enabler. Maybe I could do color work cowl with it. Then I'd have to get more yarn. I'd have to get more yarn. Oh, sad to me. You're in way too much. Knit Eco Chic is in the way too much math section to get in the shawl color change. Yes, figuring out the color changes is where it's super, super painful. You know what? The Knit Eco Chic, I don't really have a sin bin. I do put things in timeout, but the thing is I am very much a monogamous knitter. I can't switch to something else because if I switch to something else that grabs my attention, I rarely go back to the previous thing because it just doesn't happen. I just know myself. So I just have to be not knitting when I am pondering something. Yes, it knew what it did. It does. It's freaking. It needs to sit there and think about the choices it's made. It is so annoying. A headband, I think it's too much yarn for a headband. Yes, I am a monogamous knitter, Knit Eco Chic. Believe it or not, it is the way that I approach things. I'm only really ever knitting on one thing. Now, that's not to say I don't swatch things while I'm knitting something else, but I really only ever have one project on the needles at any given time. And it's just the way I have to roll. Keyhole scarf. That's interesting, Barbara. I wonder if I could get enough. I don't know. There are many. You know what? I really like scarves. I know a lot of people don't like knitting just rectangles, but for me, they're just kind of like giant swatches, and I love swatching. So that's the thing. Yeah, okay, so let's talk a little bit about. I want to show you because here's something else I've been contemplating. So, when I am doing like part of the thing about this was doing the math so that I had the appropriate amount of yarn usage. And when I say appropriate amount, it's kind of a not too much, not too little kind of situation because I don't want to have my knitters buy yarn and then not use a sufficient quantity. Like if I'm going to go into a second skein, I want to use at least half of that second skein. I don't want to make people put in that investment. But on the flip side, I do not want to necessarily maximize the yarn usage because I don't want people to run out of yarn. Because I know that like 80% of y'all aren't going to swatch for a shawl. I just know it. I feel it in my bones. I know it. Okay. So I have to take that into consideration. So if you look here, these are the 6 colors. And that top number is the first thing I do after I roll them up into a ball is actually weigh the ball. So I know exactly how much weight, how much yarn I have. Now, this is the Yummy two-ply. This is not yummy. This is Yowza mini skeins. They are labeled to have 80 grams. They are 80-gram skeins. And you can see here that I had a 92.79, a 90, an 86.89, 89.95, 83.67, 89.08, and 82.5. So those are the weights. And you can see at the beginning is when I was doing all of the weighing and trying to figure stuff out. And the reason why I do that is if I were to design and simply knit and be like, okay, I've knit this and I have a little ball of yarn left over, so I'm fine. Nobody's going to run out of yarn. But if I did that with color A, the ball was heavy by 12.79 grams. That's a lot of yarn. That is almost 100 grams. I mean, 92, that's 12 grams over. That's a lot of yardage over. So what I have to do is I have to weigh that and subtract out whatever the overage is to get back to 80 grams, because 80 grams is what I'm working with, because that is what you can generally expect to have in a skein. Now, the industry standard is plus or minus 3%. So technically, you could have a skein that is labeled an 80-gram skein and it actually only have like 78 grams in it, and that still would be within the tolerances of industry standard. Now, I don't think I've ever seen, because I weigh these all the time and I knit with Miss Babs all the time, I don't know that I've ever seen her with an underweight skein, but having generous skeins is something Miss Babs does frequently. But I can't count on that when I'm designing. So first thing I have to do is subtract out that yardage. And then the next thing I do is I only design to using 90% of the yarn. That is to compensate for people being off gauge, not doing gauge swatches, and that industry standard. So I did all my math based on having 72 grams. The usage I was looking for is 72 grams, right? So with each ball of yarn, I needed to have a minimum of 8 grams left over plus whatever that overage was. So for the pink one, it was 8 plus 12. So I still needed to have that much yarn left over. The reason I'm telling you all this is because I have these jobbies right here. These are the leftovers. 1, 2, there's one missing. I'm missing one. Where'd it go? I'm missing a blue one. I'm going to have to find the blue one. I'm missing one of the blue ones. It's probably gone AWOL. You know what? If I have lost the other blue one, then I can't do, because what I was thinking about doing is designing something with these leftovers. Something specifically like, and doing it. So here are the leftovers. So if you have leftovers, you can make this. And I didn't know if I should do a cowl. And what I was thinking about doing is a cowl of some sort that was trying to make it so that you could use whatever amount of leftovers you have. And since this is DK, I then thought, well, maybe I could do it where you could either use DK weight or fingering weight held double to use up scraps. So a scrappy thing might be in the future if oh, there it is. I found it. I'm like, what? Why would I lose it? Yeah, here we go. So I've got all this yarn left. But there's a reason why I have all this yarn left. But I can also see if, like, I bought this yarn and I knit the thing and I had this all left over, I can also see being frustrated, being like, well, I have all this yarn left over. Why didn't the designer use more of the yarn? But I just explained why I didn't use more. There's reasons. And the thing is the math. This is the one that all the math was done on. And when I did all the math, and when I subtracted out the 12 point whatever, I have exactly 8 grams of this left. So the math came out exactly the way it was supposed to. It just looks like a lot because it was a heavy skein. Okay, I've been seeing the chat go by, so I thought maybe I should check in and see. You don't swatch for shawls. A reliable scale, yes. I use scales all the time. As a person who believes deeply in buying an anxiety, Hank, I appreciate your deep consideration of this. I have anxiety as well. I literally take medication for it. But no, I don't want to stress my knitters out. I want my knitters. My goal for my patterns is for, yes, I want my knitters to end up with a beautiful thing that they love and that they can get use from. But for me, just as important as ending up with a beautiful thing, I want the knitting experience itself to be pleasurable. I don't want people to fight with my patterns. I don't want people to fight with my instructions. I don't want people to get frustrated with running out of yarn. I mean, I want you to have a pleasant experience in the process and end up with a product that you like. So yeah, I think way too deeply probably about a lot of this. Okay, so knit eco chic, 90% of each color or total. Well, it kind of comes out to the same thing because I'm doing all my okay, 90% of each color or total. It's 90% of each color, but it comes out to the same thing because if I take 80 times 0.9, that gives me 72. Okay, that's 72 grams. That's 8 grams per ball, right? If I take 80 times 6 and then multiply that by 0.9, that's 432. No, I did math bad. See, this is why we don't do these things. I'm not doing the math. You can't make me knit eco chic, Lindsay. Don't make me do math in public. I hate math. It works out the same. I do 90% of each color, but 90% of each color is the same as 90% of it as a whole. Because it's the same. It maths out the same. Yeah, a puppy sweater. That is not gonna happen. You can enjoy that. I have cockatiels. If I tried to put something on them, they would have a freaking conniption fit. DK scraps, man. You know, and a hat is a possibility, but the thing is people are going to have varying amounts of leftovers. So what I was trying to figure out what to do is how to make something that can use varying amounts of leftovers. What I was thinking about is doing a cowl, but instead of it being a cowl knit in the round, that it's a cowl that you cast on and knit like this, and then however many scraps you have. So what my idea was is start with like a ribbing or a texture that's going to lay flat and then just work through all your different colors. And when you get to the point where you're almost done, do a button band on the other end, bring it around, button it up. And it either is going to be, you know, however long the cowl ends up being. So it can compensate for however many scraps that you have. And you can knit it in DK or you can knit it with fingering held double or a combination of the both if we're doing something that's really scrappy looking. So I think I might try to do that. And what I was thinking of doing is I can't do it quickly, but what I was thinking of doing is if I do that, what I would do is set it up so that if you buy this shawl at the same time, and I'd have to figure out a way to retroactively do it, that you get a discount on this scrappy pattern because it's for the leftovers of this essentially. So if you've bought this, you're going to get it for like half off, but also leave it so that people can buy it as a standalone pattern for full price if they want to. So is what my brain was thinking. And actually, I said the button band, but I can tell you exactly what I would do is I would give the option. So it'd be an option for a button band, but also an option just ending with the same texture pattern, putting it together, whip stitching it, and then sewing buttons onto it because it's fake buttons. Because I don't like buttonholes. I do not like buttonholes. They're no fun. Oh, 6-year-old nephew can definitely make them disappear. Ooh, a scrap blanket would be fun. You became a programmer so you don't have to math. Excellent, Abby. I didn't think I was going to have to math as a knitter, but no, so much math. All the math. You just finished Desiree. Excellent. You just finished your impulse buy and you love it. That makes me so happy. That is one of those ones. And that's why I'm thinking that the I don't know what to call it, but it's like a naming convention that I've stumbled into because I had the impulse buy and then I did the second sock cowl. And now I'm thinking about um the short attention span. So it's things based on like impulse or not impulse, but just like feelings. I don't know. It's like they're weird words, but it's based on like desire, what you want to do kind of things. It's a strange naming situation. And speaking of strange naming, so this one is actually somebody earlier mentioned Pinterest being like Alice in Wonderland. This is going to be in my Alice in Wonderland series. The name of this shawl is going to be Cabbages and Kings. So that is what this is called, Cabbages and Kings, which is nonsense. It's talking about everything, which is what we kind of do here. Beautiful shawl, you need a matching hat. I have found that people don't really, you know what? I made a good scarf. And immediately the ladies at the knit store that I worked at were like, oh, one or two of them were like, I need a matching hat. I need a matching hat. So I designed the matching hat and the sales of it have not been in any way in relation to the sales of the scarf. So it's strange. I haven't found that people particularly want matching things, which is interesting. Except for I mean, and it's great, and I did it. And actually, it's kind of funny because the name of I made a good scarf, and then the women were like, "We want a matching hat." So literally, the name of the hat is a matching hat. I named it a matching hat because I was like, I don't know what to call this. This is a matching hat. Thank you for coming, Lindsay. Yes, crazy quilts. Crazy quilts. So she's saying quilting has crazy quilts. Knitting crochet can have crazy blankets. Her mom puts her scrap balls in a big paper bag and randomly pulls them out as she changes colors. So here's the thing, and I think they're called crazy balls or something like that. There's a really interesting thing I did in the Atlanta Knitting Guild once. And what we did is everybody in the guild brought scraps. They brought scrap balls and I think it was a specific yarn weight. And what it is we all sat at tables and everybody put their scrap balls in the middle of the table. And what you did is you just grabbed a ball and pulled off, so much yarn and then cut it and then grabbed another ball and we did one of those magic knotting. They taught us how to do this special knotting technique, and you pull off until you got a strand and you just kept on doing it and adding it in and going round and round until they let us do it for a certain time. And then they like blew a whistle and everybody got up and moved to the next table and repeated the process, winding the ball at the thing. So by the end of the night, we had this ball of yarn like this big around that was just all of these random things. And then you just, and what you did is when you tied the knot, you left fairly long ends. And then when you knit with it, it's got like it almost looks like tassels and stuff. And you make a big giant cowl out of it. It was a fun activity. But that is definitely something you could do with your own What you could do is like take it out of a ball, and if you have a Swift, put it back on the Swift, and then just cut it and pull it off so you have a whole bunch of strands that are the same length, and then just randomly tie them together based on however many colors you have, and then you just knit or crochet with it, and that could be super cool. Hello, Tina. Um, yes, decision fatigue is a thing. I get it all the time. That's what talking about, decision fatigue. And I really, really get it. Oh, hello, Her Dazzling Creations. Thank you for coming. Okay, so. Ooh, I saw a question so I'm on quite a few Facebook knitting groups. Most of the time, I just lurk and listen, but I enjoy them, and it's a much better thing to see in my feed than the various ads that I get. And there was a question that someone asked that I didn't know if we've talked about before, but I know this is a question that and I was like, I could make a video about that. And then I was like, that would be like a 3-minute video. So like, there's too much to say for it to be one of the shorts, because the shorts are 60 seconds, but it's not enough to make a video. And the question that this person asked is, do you weave in your ends before or after you block your piece? Has anyone ever thought of that or asked that question? I don't know. So the thing about this is, there is no definitive answer for this question. Abby, I am with you. I weave in before I block. That is my personal choice. And here we go. Studio Roots weaves in, who is also a very experienced knitter, weaves in afterwards. And Elizabeth is saying it depends on her fabric. So it is one of those personal preference kind of situations. So, and you don't weave in on lace. Exactly. Weave before, but sniff at. That's Karen is exactly me. So, and I believe in snip after. You got to snip after. I have actually, when we used to go to TNNA, I have been in a group of designers that we've gotten to fairly heated discussions about should you weave in before or after. And there are really, really good reasons for both approaches. Neither is wrong. I weave in before, but that's because I actually had a bad result one time where I didn't weave in before. So now I always weave in before. You weave in before because who knows when I'll get around to blocking. Oh, that's sneaky, Abby. We got a before. I don't like yarn poking out after blocking. I totally understand. Blocking, who blocks? Tina! Tina, you gotta block. Blocking is very important. My good Whoopi has ends popping out all over. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not good. I mean, you could call them tassels, I guess. What happened for me is I was working on a bulky piece, and what ended up happening, hang on. I'm going to see if I can find a picture. Hang on. What happened is it was a bulky yarn, and I did not weave the ends in prior to blocking. And the yarn was a beautiful yarn. It bloomed. It bloomed like it fluffed out like it was a caterpillar. It almost, and it was beautiful, and it became soft, and it did exactly what I wanted it to do. But the end that I had not yet woven in, because it wasn't under the compression of being in the tension of the stitches, it like doubled in size. It was like this giant floofy thing. And when I wove it in, you could see it. I mean, it was like you could see it in the fabric, and it frustrated me. And it also had to do with the color of it. And I'm trying to think because I very strategically took the photographs so you couldn't see it. And I'm looking at the photographs trying to see if I can show it to you. But here is here's the pattern. It is not one that has gotten a whole lot of love, but I really like it. Sometimes they're just things that I make because I wanted to make them. So it puffed up. So I personally like to weave in first because then I know that that end is under the same amount of tension as the rest of it. And when it does bloom, it should bloom relatively evenly to how the rest of the stitches bloom. And that's just why I do it. There are plenty of reasons to do it in other ways, but I definitely do weave in, block, and then snip. That's how I do it. Oh my goodness. Well, I gotta tell you, not blocking. So Knit Crochet Tiger says, I will only block if it's like a sweater and it has to fit, but shawls and scarves, wash it, dry, and go. So what do you do if it's lace? Because if you don't block lace, it just kind of looks like a hot mess. And maybe that you don't do lace, and that's always viable. When you block, you're done. Ms. asked, wouldn't it kind of depend on the fabric and item to determine which is better for that specific project? I'm sure that you can come up with reasons why you would want to weave it in afterwards. I've never had any problems weaving it in first. Like this is going to be a hot mess weaving it in. But I'm sure if you have a reason, then you can totally do it. You had the whole bind off a lace shawl come out as it was 100% silk. That makes me want to cry and hold your hand and tell you that everything will be okay and buy you ice cream. Oh, or tequila, whichever your preference is. I'm so sorry. Um, okay, Tina, in my defense, okay, well, blocking a sock, you do probably block your socks because blocking a sock involves putting it on your tootsies. It's like, here you go, it's on my foot, blocked. That's pretty much how you block it. You can put all the controversy you want. And because you know what? As much as I am an advocate of blocking, if you don't want to block, I'm not going to hunt you down and make you block. It's not my job. You can do whatever you want. um, So, oh, Christina, you like my shawl? Thank you so much. That shawl really did not get a lot of attention. I really like it. One of the things I really like about it is, and I tried to take the pictures, instead of like a garter edge on it, it's one of my only patterns that starts with a garter tab. And it starts with a garter tab because I wanted to have that cable edge going along, and it's to keep the edge from rolling. It's got a cable on it, but the cable actually goes over the edge, and I just think it looks really cool. And then it's got the pie shawl shaping. And then what happens is you have the pie shawl shaping in the body, and then that row just above the basket weave is literally um doubles the stitches. It's like knit front back all the way across, like the whole thing. It's like you do the cable edge and then it's knit front back until there's X number of stitches, and you like double the number of stitches. And then you have to add in one more stitch to get the math to work on the return row. And then there's no increasing. And the reason why I did it that way, because what you have is you have a spoke half circle that converts to a pie shawl shaping. and then that basket weave trim, and I thought it just looked so soft and so beautiful. And it actually, I designed it, and if you looked at it, the name of it is Till There Was You, which is a very old romantic song. It was intended to be a wedding shawl. That is what a winter wedding shawl is what I had envisioned for this particular piece. Um, I think maybe if I'd been able to do the photographs on an actual bride, it might have gone over well. I think the reason why this pattern did um, not particularly successful is based in a large part on the photographs. But it was what I had to work with, and sometimes you can't, I can't, rent a wedding dress and slap it on somebody to try to take the pictures. There's a little bit too much of a cost involved there. But it's pretty, and the thing is you can make the basket weave because of that doubled stitching. You could make that basket weave trim. You could go substantially further without ever having to increase. Um, and it's bulky. It knits up fast. So if you're having problems with bulky or super bulky popping out, Karen, if it is a plied yarn, what you can do is actually separate the plies and weave them in separately, because it makes them smaller, and that is not as big of a problem. And if I have issues with a yarn not behaving and popping out, what I will frequently do is, I weave in my ends, and what I'll do is I'll do my normal duplicate stitch, but then I'll take the yarn needle with a sharp point and actually pull the yarn through the purl bumps, like split the fabric. Not Don't go through the fabric, but like the purl bumps, I'll actually like stick it in and put the needle between the plies and pull it so it's actually, so essentially, like, say you got 2 plies, I'll take the needle and put it in and pull the end through, so it essentially makes it 3 plies on the back, and I'll do that through a couple of the backs, and that usually will hold it down. It gets stuck there. But I do the whole thing where I duplicate stitch in this direction and then duplicate stitch in this direction, and, I mean, I do a lot of weaving in events. I weave in lots and lots of ends. Okay. Good luck, figuring that out for Tunisian. I will tell you, so the spokes, the half circle shaping on it is a little strange. You see how it's so open, and it's because you have markers there, and I'm actually the way that a spoke thing like this would normally work is that each of those points, it would be yarn over, knit one, yarn over. So you would have multiple spines, and you're increasing 2 stitches at each point. What I did on this to make it and give it that effect that it has, that super lacy effect, is that it's you I can't remember exactly because this is years old, but there are markers in there, but it's essentially you knit to the marker, yarn over, slip marker, and do that across. And then on the wrong side, you knit to the marker, yarn over, slip the marker. So instead of it being yarn over, knit stitch, yarn over, like this, it's the yarn overs are on either side of the stitch marker. And so these are 2 on the wrong, it'd be 2 yarn overs on the right side, and then on the wrong side, you're purling them. The way that this is set up is that the yarn overs are right side, wrong side, and they stack like this, which gives it the effect of, and forgive me, this is the actual knitting term for it. It is called, this type of lace is called faggoting. And it's that particular type of lace where you have the yarn overs on both the right and the wrong side. So it makes it much, much lacier. So if you're trying to recreate it in Tunisian, that is something you might want to take into consideration. Oh, you weave in as you go, Colette? That's more determination than I have. Okay, so Abby, just so you know, I don't know if you do gauge swatches, but one of the things I do teach about in my classes is that when you're knitting a gauge swatch, you have to use the same yarn, you have to use the same needles, you have to use the same hands, and you have to be like, if you drink wine while you're knitting your gauge swatch, then you are obligated to drink wine while you are knitting your project, or your gauge might be off. So just so you know. Hey, Bonnie, I'm so glad you're here. Christina C is what I was going for. You said the edging reminds you of a wedding dress. That's what I was. This is very much a wedding piece, and that was my goal, and that's why I used the white. This yarn doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately, but finding a nice bulky would be fun. Oh darn! Another glass of wine. I would love to see you do it, Christina C. It's a fun. I like the pattern. Um, and you should go listen to the song if you've never heard it. And when I say it's an old song, I mean like the 20s. Let me look it up. Well, the Beatles did it, but that's not, I don't think that's the original. Yeah. So the Beatles did a version of it, but according to the Wikipedias, um, it was Music Man. Show tune in the 1957. First recorded is Till I Met You in 1950, and then also recorded in 51, and then 57, and then The Music Man. Oh, Anita Bryant did a version of it in 1959. That I need to listen to. And then the Beatles did it, which is probably where I heard it. Because my parents were big Beatles fans. So that's it. One fur baby, no kids. I haven't heard that one. um, I don't drink wine, but I do tell that joke because it's but it's true. So I had a friend who was knitting a sweater, right? And she knitted on her knit nights and stuff. And she had gotten to the point where she got the body and then she got the arm done, and she had gotten half of the second arm done. And then she came back to knit night, and she had it and she was frogging it. She was frogging the arm. And I'm like, what happened? What happened to your sweater? And what happened is she was finished knitting up the arm. And this was when I lived in Atlanta. And it was the Sunday, I think it was like Super Bowl Sunday or something. I think it was Super Bowl. It was a big football game, and the Atlanta Falcons were in this big football game. I don't know anything about football. And she was watching it with all of her other football friends. And as the Falcons proceeded to do stupid stuff and lose and lose and lose a little bit more, she got angrier and angrier and angrier, and her tension got tighter and tighter and tighter, and she literally ended up with that second arm being like 3 inches too short. It was like, and it was like really tiny in circumference because she was knitting it angry, because she wasn't knitting it in the right frame of mind. So she had to bring it back to knit night and frog it out because she wasn't. So you have to be in the right, you got to be in a good frame of mind. You got to have a relaxed swatch, and you got to have a relaxed knitting process. I mean, if you want to knit stressed, then you should swatch stressed. But it was hilarious because it was like, oh, this was, you have to frog it because the Falcons lost the Super Bowl or whatever it was. It was really funny. I mean, not funny, but funny. Wine and chocolate. You got to watch out for the chocolate because it can get on the yarn. Oh, okay, I can definitely hear it in nursing homes. It is one of those songs that sticks in your brain. It's this whole fur baby thing. I don't have a fur We don't have fur babies, we got feather babies. Which they're they're birds. They're crazy birds. Um, knit lace, live dangerously. Yeah, I bet you go without stitch markers. That's why they call it tension. You're totally right, Studio Roots. I gotcha. Oh yeah. You know what? I don't like wine. I've tried. I don't like wine. I don't like beer, and it's not that I have any like moral high horse or any judgment or anything against. I mean, there are times where I'm definitely like, I wish I drank a lot because I need it. I don't like the taste of it. And it's funny, people are like, well, you have to acquire a taste. I'm like, why would I spend money and calories acquiring a taste? I don't need to acquire the taste. I don't like it. If I'm gonna like spend time acquiring the taste for something, it should be like broccoli. I mean, at least that's good for me. No stitch markers, no lifelines. Me, my wine and lace. You know what, Abby? That is awesome. I'm glad that that works for you. I actually had a woman in my knit group um, who would knit lace in while she watched in the movie theater. She could knit it by touch, and she'd be doing fancy lace in the movie theater, and I just never understood. It was when I first started knitting, and I was just like mystified. I'm like, "Are you magic? How are you doing that?" And she was knitting. It was a really famous Jared Flood. Um, what is that? Ooh, I have a message on Ravelry. Um, okay. Okay, this is not going to be easiest. I don't know. It was a very lacy shawl. Like by lace, it was like lace, but also like lace weight. It was a very fancy shawl, and I couldn't believe she was knitting it in the movie theater. I couldn't, and it was like real lace. It had lace on both sides. It was. I'm like, oh, how do you do that? You're magic. I can't remember what it was. Okay, see, which is a worse rabbit hole? Ravelry or is it Ravelry or Pinterest? I can't decide which one is more distracting. That's the question. Ravelry or Pinterest? Which one takes is more of a time suck? Cheetos in a cup and shake them in your mouth. I've seen people who eat Cheetos with chopsticks, which I think is fantastic. Yeah, chopsticks. Said it about. I actually and there's like little clippy things that you can get. Um, Chinese tomato soup. That sounds good. $40 worth of Kool-Aid. That's excellent. Cheetos are good. She doesn't even Tracy, she didn't even look at it. She was watching the movie and didn't even look at her hands. I don't know how she did it. Pinterest sends more emails. Yes, Studio Roots, Zandy. I first saw Zandy eating it with the chopsticks. It was amazing. You know what, Knit Crochet Tiger? I really do not spend a lot of time on Etsy, but that is a whole other thing. Nets I get frustrated with Etsy because Etsy makes it hard to actually find artisans. There's so once they I mean, initially it was just you had to be the person hand making it. And then they opened it up that you could be a design collective, where it was multiple people running a single Etsy shop. And once they rewrote the rules where design collective could include 40 people working in a warehouse in China, um, like churning out whatever, I really had to reconsider Etsy. So for me, Etsy has a lot of amazing things, but the amount of time I have to spend searching through the person's profile and everything to figure out if they're an actual artisan or if this is just a thinly disguised reproduction type place, I it's frustrating. So Etsy does not suck me in. I mean, it used to, but not no more. Um, I can't knit anything without looking, Karen. I really can't. Yes, Abby, Etsy is a little shady towards the sellers. Um, and they recently instituted a mandatory advertising and marketing fee that all sellers have to pay, regardless of whether or not they want to. I mean, you have to pay to put up a listing. And listings have a set amount of time that they last, and if the listing expires without someone purchasing the thing, you still have to have paid that Etsy listing fee. And it's not a huge amount of money, but it adds up. um so I just For me, Etsy is not. It had wonderful ideas and started off well, but, as with anything, many things, once the corporation took over, it kinda kinda lost it for me. Um, and the other issue, specifically for me, is that, as a knitwear designer, when you list a PDF for $7, um, and you then get the charge disputed and a complaint, and because the person who was purchasing it thought they were getting the hand knit lace beaded shawl shipped to them for $7 because they didn't read PDF, or this is a digital document, or this is a set of instructions to make this. They think that they are literally purchasing whatever this knitted item is, and they've just found a great deal. That happens with more frequency than you would think. So it's really super frustrating. Um, if I have an artist, Tracy Lowe says, sounds like I'll be on Etsy less than I am now. It's still fine. Just make sure that you research, like we go into the thing where it gives the description. Because like there are artists that I do buy from that their primary venue is an Etsy store. And so a lot of times what it is that it's an artist I already know and I go through and buy it because I know that this is an independent artist. But buying from just it you can look and you can find, because I mean, I bought these. I have they're in bad shape. We need to get them. So I decided to get rid of I bought this on Etsy. I decided to get rid of paper towels. And so I found this vendor on Etsy, and literally what it is this piece of fabric that has been serged all around the edges, and it was like a pack of 20 something of them for a certain amount of money, and we just keep these and we use them as napkins and wipes and things. It's back here because I think I had a Diet Coke sitting on it. It was a coaster. um and but it can be washed. I don't have a serger. I'm not going to mess with sewing it. I was perfectly happy to pay someone what I found was a reasonable amount, and so like I bought that on Etsy. But as I said, you have to make sure that you're buying from a person. And frankly, if the price seems too good to be true, you're probably not buying from a person. You're buying from a cooperative. Yeah, $7 is a pretty low price for being dumb. I think being dumb should be more expensive. I agree. It's no, it's they don't eat the cost. They get mad. They get mad. They leave nasty ratings. I have had I don't sell on Etsy, but I have other designer friends who sell on Etsy, and every month or two they'll get someone who's pitching a wingding about it. Is what it is. Okay, so we've been here for about an hour and a half. Haven't had any substantial. We've been talking way more about knitting and fiber arts this time, which is really exciting. Haven't gone off on any substantial tangents. As I said previously, I think some of y'all are trying to do that on purpose, which I'm okay with. But does anybody have any questions? Anything that you were thinking about or you wanted to talk about? Or I really, as always, really appreciate y'all coming in and listening to me babble. It just really I sometimes have a hard time understanding why y'all just want to listen to me talk, because I'm talking to myself when I'm looking at myself in the thing. I try my best to look into the webcam so like I can make eye contact, but I'll catch myself looking at myself, and I'm like, why are these people? Why I'm talking to my computer? I love having y'all here. It's so much fun. It's so wild. My shoulder hurts. I don't know what's going on with my shoulder. Friday? It's Thursday, Abby. Did you lose days? Or are you like Friday Eve? Oh, I see what you're saying. Friday Eve diversion. Excellent. Everyone was in their best behavior tonight. It's okay. We can misbehave too. It's okay. In the afternoon, we might. Okay, I'll see about if we can get an afternoon one. We did do a Sunday one once. Maybe we can do that again. Maybe we can do that again. Oh, dude, I haven't talked to y'all since I went to my concert. I went to my concert. It was awesome. It was so good. I went to my K-pop concert, and I had a blast. It was hilarious because I had to stay in the line for like an hour to just get inside, and I stood in the line next to another woman who had come by herself and had a lovely conversation with her. But it was kind of funny to stand in line chatting with a woman in a chicken suit because she was wearing a chicken suit. Everybody dressed like wild, and it was so much fun. It kind of made me regret not wearing crazy stuff. But I had a blast. My AT's light stick is where it belongs, next to my Stray Kids light stick. I'm hoping to go to Stray Kids. They're gonna fixing to do right now. They're doing they're in Asia. They're doing Seoul. But hopefully we're going to be having a North American tour, and I'll see if I can get tickets to that, but that might be really, really rough. They did a Japan tour where they were doing 50,000 seat arenas, and the entire tour sold out in 5 minutes. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to get tickets to that one, but I had fun at the one I went to. So it was awesome. Okay. Well, it looks like we don't have any more questions. I really appreciate y'all joining me. September, we should be on for the last Thursday. Why is that not cooperating with me? It looks like September. Let's see what September looks like. Looks like the 26th. So I can see, at this point, I can see no reason why we would not be here in September. I appreciate all the new people and all of the familiar faces. Thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully in September, you will see Cabbages and Kings will be coming out. I will do a video on it, a pattern tour, and talk about things. I'm going to contemplate all kinds of fun stuff and watch for the short attention span. If you want to talk more about this, please feel free to talk in the comments after this is posted. But also, if you're in the Facebook group, you can come over to the Facebook group group and we can talk. I'd love to hear your thoughts on small projects, what kind of like the short attention span projects you might find interesting to do. Yay, bells! I'm excited you're going to be here, Abby. And Studio Roots, thank you as always for staying up super late and being here with us. Desiree, I'm so glad that you came and you enjoyed it, and you have a cute little bee. What is that? Is that a bee? You have a bee. I look at it and I'm like, is it a bee or a yellow jacket? Because my son wants to go to Georgia Tech, so I see yellow jackets everywhere, which is silly. Okay. Thank you all so much. I will see you soon. And again, any chatting on any of the videos or on the Facebook live, the Facebook group, we can always have fun. You turned on at the right time, Katya. I'm so glad you did. Okay, so thank you so much. I'm going to push the end stream button, and then it's going to ask me if I really want to do it. And I sort of do, but it's time. So bye-bye. Good night, y'all.